welcome to another episode of Chatterbox with me, Mel Biggs. This is the podcast where every month I get to sit down with one of my favourite folk musicians from across the UK or Europe and interview them about the person behind the music. This month my fantastic guest is Archie Churchill-Moss. You might be familiar with him. He plays in lots of different lineups. Things like Sam Kelly, Seth Lakeman he's just got off a tour with, Sam Sweeney, Eliza Carthy, Jim Moray, many, many more, Blair Dunlop. Lots of big names. He is such a humble, lovely person, very warm spirit. I have had a lot of conversations with him over the years, just sort of snapshots when we've been teaching alongside each other at events, but never had the opportunity to properly sit down and deep dive with him. I actually fangirl a little bit in this interview over his dad's old band, Shave the Monkey. So if that piques your interest, then this is the interview for you. It was a great interview. I want to say thank you to Archie straight off the bat for letting me deep dive with him into his career, and I really hope that you enjoy it too. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's Archie Churchill-Moss. Archie, it's an absolute honour to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'm really pleased we were able to find some time to fit you in because you're mega busy at the moment. You've just got off a tour with Seth Lakeman. How was that?
Yeah, it was a bit mad really. Like it kind of came upon me like just kind of like randomly. I just got a text from him saying, we're doing this new album. Do you want to come and write some melody lines and play box on the album? And I was like, yeah, that sounds wicked. So we went and did it over like a couple of days in a studio in Plymouth. And then it's like, cool, that's that. You know, don't know if there's going to be anything else from that, but it was a really good experience. I mean, we've got 14 tracks done live in 2.5 days, which was like...
Whoa, that's full on. How many hours were you in the studio? Like 12-hour days, 14 hours?
We were maybe starting at 10 and kind of going on until about 7, with a break for lunch. So it was cool. I mean, it's certainly a way to do it, you know, just get everyone in and just kind of plow on through. But we were doing a lot of the kind of arranging in the studio as well. So we did that. And then I was like, that's, you know, brilliant, like nice project to be involved in. And then got a message being like, oh, we're doing an album launch tour. Do you want to come on tour? And I was like, yeah, that sounds brilliant. Sign me up. So we did 11 gigs in 11 days. 10 gigs in England and 1 gig in Wales.
Nice, so perfect. I mean, what was it like? I don't know about you. Seth Lakeman was one of the first sort of... I was like a girl crush, you know. I was in that age group, probably mid-teens, I can imagine, when he first came on the scene. And I can remember when I first went to university, he did a university tour, which I thought was mega. Mm-hmm. And he came and sort of performed to about 200 people at the social club at Cardiff.
Right.
And I can remember it was like the Kitty J era, which I don't think has ever really finished for him. But obviously now he's been on tour with, you know, the name of the band.
Robert Plant.
Thank you. He's been on tour with Rob Plant. I did know that. My brain has not been on form lately. So I'm thinking that potentially is there a world tour in this with him? I mean, I don't know. Do you think you'd be on his cards again?
We'll see. I mean, with like, you know, the last few years I've been doing a lot of session work and I absolutely love it. Like I love the focus, you know, having to prepare for projects in that way, sometimes with a very limited time scale, but the whole thing of the session work is you're completely dispensable. So, you know, I'm always grateful for, you know, I'm always absolutely delighted when people ask me to come and record on their records or come on tour with them, but I'm never thinking of it as like this is a thing that's set in stone. You know, even bands like that I've been working for years and they're like with my best mates. You know, I would never take my place for granted in those bands because that's, you know, it's part of the deal really. But hopefully.
I mean, that would be the dream, right?
Yeah.
A world tour of any kind, but particularly with Seth Lakeman. You strike me as somebody, I obviously know you quite well. We've worked together at teaching events and things, and so we've had a chance to chat and sort of catch up and things. but you've always struck me as somebody that's got a really chilled out nature, a beautiful energy about you that's very warm and open, but just super chill. Do you find that session work goes well with that kind of mindset and that approach? Like you say, it's intensely focused, but there's no promise of anything else. It's just there in the moment.
I think so. Yeah. Firstly, that's very kind of you to say. But like with, if you're going on tour with a group of musicians, you've got to like, you're not necessarily kind of like hanging out and getting on like all the time. There might be, times on tour where everyone kind of goes their separate ways, but you are going to be in close quarters for 2, 3. I mean, I've done some kind of 3-week tours with Sam Kelly and Jamie, the banjo player from Sam's band. We're driving around to the gig, we're doing the gig, we're eating together, we're saving money, so we're kind of sharing hotel rooms or staying wherever. It's like you've got to kind of get on with those people and hang out with people that you're gonna get on with for like 3 weeks, because otherwise it's going to be pretty long. It's going to be a pretty long time. So it's like, if you can kind of entertain yourself when you need to entertain yourself and be pretty flexible and pretty fluid, I think that kind of helps for the whole session musician thing.
How long have you been doing the session work? I mean, I'm looking at your discography. There's so many amazing names. Honey and the Bear, Blair Dunlop, Kitty McFarlane, Ange Hardy when she was, big. She's disappeared completely now, but she was there for a while.
I mean, it kind of started with the Ange Hardy thing, really. We would do it because I didn't think about being a musician until third year of uni. I'd always kind of done. We'd been doing the trio Mormos Rutter since. Me and Tom have been playing music together since we were 11. Yeah, we were just doing that, and kind of it was a nice thing to do through uni, just like going to festivals in summer. And then might have been second or third year, I just got a call from Ange. She was a West Country singer looking for a West Country accordion player, and it was, it was kind of perfect. And it was a great little gig to get, especially at uni, because it meant that I didn't have to go and work in Starbucks or
sweaty bars or anything like
that. Exactly. And I mean, I could go away for a weekend and do a couple of gigs, and that would kind of get me through a month or two at uni. So I guess it would have started then in 2015, let's say, I reckon. And it's kind of built up from there, but it's something that I'm really, really delighted to be able to do.
She was so like mega focused on the business end of things. I know that kind of rubbed a few people up the wrong way, but for me, I was watching her and thinking she's really switched on. She's very savvy. I actually really liked her output. I liked the way that she worked, but she was regular as clockwork, wasn't she? She had her, and I
one
wondered,
album a year.
Working with her, did that kind of rub off on you? Did you see that and think, good, bad, how do I want to work in this world,
Yeah, I guess I was, at that time, I was just a bit oblivious to how it all worked. I still hadn't kind of put together what a career in music looks like. So I was just kind of bumbling around, just turning up when I had to turn up. But I guess looking back on it, she kind of had the long-term and the short-term plan thing sorted. And I've never really been one for the long-term plan. I think just things can just change far too quickly for me to bother thinking about that. But I guess depending on how firm those plans are set, like it can be a really, really useful thing to have. But just, like you were saying, like the clockwork cycle of her work was really quite something, one album a year, and it would be done over the course of a month, kind of intensively, but also like with lots of break, but like all the tracking would be done in a month, and then it would be sent off. And the quality of the products, like the actual kind of like physical quality was amazing as well. And it was a really like aesthetically, it was a very powerful branding, I guess. Yeah. I guess we're all it feels funny to think of it like that, but like we are kind of trying to brand ourselves and sell our music.
Yeah, I have to say for me at the moment in my life, it's a love-hate relationship with all of that, particularly because social media is the prime place where we all kind of stick our posters, for want of a better metaphor, but it's where we're all showing our face and trying to get followers and engagement. But that whole world for me has changed because of Trump, Elon Musk, and everyone, all of those kind of tech bros getting on board with each other. It's just such a different world. I won't take up any time on the podcast about it, but I feel very differently than I did 6 months ago. And I think that it's really, really difficult now. But you've been in the scene for so long, you've kind of been carving out this place for yourself for so long that you are so well known now, and people like Seth Lakeman are just calling you up and inviting you onto a session. So I can imagine that it's quite a nice position to be in, but it's like you say, it could all go away overnight. The long-term plan, I'm the same, live for the moment, make the most of it.
I think I've always been quite good at keeping myself busy as well. So if I've got periods where I've not got so much session work, I've always got kind of ideas for not necessarily full projects, but kind of like soundscape ideas, or kind of just like sonic themes that I want to explore. So sometimes, for example, this September, I've got absolutely no work, and it's brilliant. It's going to be brilliant. I've got this idea for this new record that's kind of very much in its infancy. So I'm going to go and work with my very good mate Evan Carson, who's an amazing drummer who kind of comes from the prog world, and we're going to kind of work on some music. But I kind of want to, because I started playing guitar a few years ago. Kind of took it up over one of the lockdowns. So I kind of want to be writing for that as well. I've kind of, I've been using that in, again, for like session gigs, but I've not kind of done any writing with that in mind. It's been very much like a tool to learn other people's music. And I'd very much describe myself as like a rhythm player on guitar. I'm trying to get the flat picking going, but it's mighty hard. But kind of having my knowledge of like box harmony from the left hand or kind of like the right hand stuff, using that and like having that as my starting point for coming onto guitar has given me like a unique angle, let's say, into how I want to voice things on guitar. And then that kind of feeds back into the box, and they're kind of both like playing around with each other.
That's nice. But I imagine for your guitar work, you're having to work out quite a lot of crazy fingering patterns because of all of the gorgeous things that you found and the voicings on the box, which is so easy. They're so, button push, it's an easy world to live in a lot of the time when you know the instrument.
That beautiful thing of just having a button that plays 3 notes at once. How I understand music is through the box. Like I understand harmony in the key of G major, and then I transpose. Because I can do all the processing about intervals in G major really, really quickly, and I can just spend the rest of that time transposing it into other keys.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are more efficient ways of doing it, but it's that kind of box-centric way of...
I'm holding my hands up and saying exactly the same. I play in all of these keys that are behind me, mainly B flat, E flat, G, C, E and CF, but everything relates to G major. I was on a show with Hazel Askew. She was the main Melodeon player on Fisherman's Friends, and there were various instruments being used on that show. It was something that we all chatted about when the score got written, because it was written for Melodeon, and then we were like, do we write everything in G major and then just put a little note on the side like this is actually on B flat?
Right, okay.
I can't remember how it got
writing for guitar and putting like capo 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I suppose the Melodeon capo is just buy another instrument. Already there's so many delicious avenues that I can dive down, what you've mentioned already, but I want to talk a little bit about where you started with music. You've just mentioned that box you started when you were about 9, when you moved to Somerset. You must have had quite a few instruments in your house just laying around, because for the podcast, I think you know this, I think I told you this, but your dad's band, Shave the Monkey, was my very first band that I was ever properly into, like actually wanted to see on stage, actually wanted to get down the front, buy the albums. If you don't know, people listening, who Shave the Monkey are, they're unfortunately no longer around, but they've got about 4 or 5 albums that you can probably still get.
Yeah.
Folk rock, English, Anglicana, French. It was a real mixture of stuff, and I just bloody loved it. But your dad seemed to have 20 instruments. I don't know. It changed every gig.
Oh god, it's getting even worse these days, Mel.
So you must have just had your pick of the lot, really. So
there was the hurdy-gurdy and the border pipes and a couple of saxophones and flute, but didn't really grow up in they were instruments that my dad had got over a number of years, but we didn't grow up particularly affluent. My older brother, so I've got 2 brothers who both were amazing musicians. My older brother kind of went down the classical route, played flute and piano, and my younger brother plays kind of bluegrass mandolin, plays fiddle. He's really good at fiddle, just doesn't pick it up enough. So when we were growing up, I remember my older brother was we were all encouraged to play instruments, but my older brother could only play an instrument that Dad already owned, because they couldn't kind of afford to buy him something new, which was a bit of an issue when I started playing box, because my parents were like, well, we'll maybe buy you an accordion. And Jake, my brother, was like, hang on, I had the choice of the hurdy-gurdy, the bagpipes and the flute, and you got to choose an instrument, you know, any instrument you wanted. So they were all around. I grew up playing a lot of music with my dad, and when we moved to Somerset, I played in a band with him, kind of like bal folk, but kind of doing the hippie festival circuit. So I grew up playing a lot of music from central France with my dad. Kind of came to that music before English music, I would say.
When did you meet Tom and Jack from Rutter?
I met Tom I would have been 11 when I met Tom, and I'd been playing box for about 3 years. And I remember I was kind of part of a youth group in Somerset called Livewise. It was led by Rob Harbron and Miranda Rutter. But at the time, had no idea who they were. They were just Rob and Miranda. And like looking back at it now, it was like an Arts Council funded thing. We met every fortnight.
Wow.
And it's lots of like musicians. So would you know like Hannah Cumming and Alex Cumming?
Yes. And, I worked with Hannah on Fisherman's, and Alex is a good friend. So
and John Dyer, flute player. So like loads of people that are still doing music, you know, professionally, and we were all part of this little folk group in Langport in Somerset. So I was kind of doing that, and that was cool. It was like an interesting thing to do, but I was like didn't really see the point of it all. I was kind of getting to that age, like early teens. I was like
questioning your decision of where your coolness lies.
It's like could be playing football, could be playing accordion, but then I entered this competition at Cambridge Folk Festival, the hub competition, and you send in a CD, like 10 minutes of you playing, and then they shortlist you. Well, if they shortlist you, you get tickets to the festival, and then you have to participate in the hub band over the weekend, and you perform on stage 3 at the festival. And I sent my CD in, but didn't hear anything back, so I was like, okay, haven't got it. And then like a week before the festival, got a phone call from Tom Moore. Never met Tom before, but the festival had assumed that we were in a duo. So they'd sent my ticket, even though our CDs would have, like, one of them would have been solo fiddle and one of them would have been solo accordion.
And sent from different areas of the
So Tom rang me up and he was like, oh no, like you're going. I've got your ticket. So we had to meet up outside the festival for him to give me my ticket, and we then were just like, you know, got on really well. Both same age, you know, both had similar interests and similar kind of musical interests outside of folk music as well. And then we just started playing as a duo for a few years and did like the youth folk scene, like Area 52 at Beverley Folk Festival. There was like a few festivals that used to have really good youth programs. And we were playing at Beverley one year, and Jack Rutter was playing there just solo, just kind of singing songs. Yeah, we thought we'd have him. And so we put together a little EP. Maybe that would have been 20. God, all these dates are really messing with my head.
Well, I mean, I'll let the podcasters know if they don't know, you won the 2011 BBC Radio 2 Young Folk Award. So that came after the first album, was that right? Or was
that came before? That came. Okay. So we used the EP to enter, and then we did the Young Folk Awards, and then from there there's a guy called Andy Bell who runs Hudson Records, who is kind of responsible for getting all of Mormus Rutter's music out there. Like we were all like 15, 16, we didn't have any money. So Andy just was like, look, we need to get this record done. Did us a ridiculous deal on this thing. So massive respect out to Andy, and, you know, did our second record, and then he signed us to Hudson Records for our last record. And we did Mormus Rutter for 10 years. Wow. From about 14, 15 to 24, 25.
That's some pretty kind of growing up years, isn't it? You know, there's a lot that happens for every person. Talk to us a bit about what that was like for you three to, to get together, obviously very quickly winning the Folk Award. What happened after that? I mean, obviously, yes, you recorded the album. Did it kind of go like wildfire for you until uni hit? And I guess things had to kind of change.
The first year, the first summer was crazy. I mean, I don't think the Folk Awards exist anymore. But we kind of did it when it was like, it still felt like quite a big thing. So the award ceremony was in London, and it was like, it's a proper thing, like kind of televised, but not like kind of red button televised. The kind of official prize for that is you get a slot at Stage 2 at Cambridge and a slot at Cropredy. And we did our gig. We used to all sit down, take it very seriously. And Cropredy was a big stage. I remember we were just debating, we were like, do we sit really close together and take up none of the stage at all? Do we sit as far apart as we can and take up all of the stage? We decided for the latter, and looking back on the videos, it looks absolutely hilarious. These three little boys just like tucked away as far away from each other on this massive stage. So we had a summer and we did about 15, 16 festivals that summer. Wow. And we kind of thought, oh, cool, like this is fine. But then obviously the year after, there's another winner, and that's for them to take on. And that kind of happened at the same time we were finishing college and finishing uni, and the gigging took a bit of a back seat. We would maybe be doing 1 or 2 weekends of gigs like every couple of months or something. Like it was really sparse. And then summer we'd be trying to do as many festivals as possible. But we I think Rutter ended up studying agricultural management at Newcastle, and Tom studied popular music at Goldsmiths, and I was doing biology Bristol. So we were all like focusing on that. And so we had a couple of really good years, and then we had very different ideas of where we wanted to take it musically. So we ended up separating a few years back, 2019 or something. It was 10 years, 3 nice records, and now we're kind of working on other things.
Yeah. But like you could totally like map the progression of maturity, almost a responsibility with the material that you were working with, and then going off into more contemporary zones as you and Tom have now done. And I think Spectres particularly, I re-listened to it before I sort of got online with you today, because when I first heard that album, I was like, whoa, somebody's got the same brain as me. It just really felt like there were this landscapes that you were painting with the music, and because it's sampling and you're using electronics and there's like lots of repetition sounds, and where did all of that sort of come in? Was that Tom's influence on you from his pop music world, or was it your own interest in it and then you just kind of like started gathering gear?
The gear gathering thing, it like took ages. I was using, I mean, not to kind of give a full rundown of what I use, but got like separate effects boards for my right hand and my left hand. And so the left hand board is very much like clean up the signal of the microphone and then split the signal and then have one of them going through an octave, which sounds like a really synthy bass pad. So I've been using that for years, was using that in Mormos Rutter, use it in loads of the bands I work in. And we were gradually kind of, this happened kind of that kind of year before Mormos Rutter actually split. Me and Tom were just talking about just making music based off music that we like to listen to. Like it was as simple as that. It's maybe something different these days. We're actually kind of trying to find some time this year to do a third record, but it was like, look, we operate on these instruments, so we're going to use these instruments, but like we listen to a lot of music that isn't folk music, and we want to see if we can replicate that and find those common themes between those musical worlds. Like, I mean, for me, like the big one is like I love a lot of electronic dance music, and like trying to find those like fundamental similarities between EDM and folk music. It's like repetition. That's like the key one. Like EDM will be like long form repetition, whereas there's loads of repeated phrases in folk music. So trying to tap into those things and not just be like, right, here's a folk tune and here's like a synth line underneath it. Like it's not really kind of, that's grand, but like it's not really tapping into like why those two musics are connected, because both musics are dance music. Yeah. Electronic dance music and folk is, traditional dance music. So they serve the same purpose. Why do they serve the same purpose? Is what I'm particularly interested in. Tom might have a slightly different answer to it, but so yeah, we We were given some money by, we went for one of those EFTIS micro grants. No, not the micro grant, the bigger one, the macro grant. And so we had about an EP ready, and we fired off the funding application because we're like, it'd be really helpful just to pay for pressing. It's always feel very lucky working with Tom on those projects because he's such an amazing sound engineer.
And with Slowworm as well, his record label. So
exactly, yeah. But yeah, so we were given this money by EFTIS, and then I think this was in September or maybe August, and then they were like, oh yeah, so the deadline has to be done by October. And we're like, right, we've only got half an album. So we kind of went into the studio. We went actually to Tom's parents at the time. We're like, right, well, we've got these tracks, and like the rest of it, we're just going to have to play around. So there's a lot of like us, like our first record, Laguna, there's a lot of tracks there where it's like, right, we're just going to like see how we respond to live delay. And like, that's going to be the track. Like, we're not going to overthink it. It's just going to be one take. You're going to play and you're going to respond to the delay that Tom's putting on it. So there's one track where I'm doing that. There's one track where Tom's doing that. So we're figuring a lot of that stuff out. And then with Spectres, the second record, we had a bit more of an idea of, we wanted to produce kind of stronger themes, like stronger hooks throughout that record, and have themes that actually appear throughout the record. So not just like each track as a standalone thing. It's like there are themes in some tracks that we'll kind of hint at in other tracks.
I think that was the thing that hit me the most. It felt very cinematic from that point of view, is that you've got like these repeated themes and also tracks that bleed into the next track, which again, I love, because it just is this headphone moment where you can just sit for an hour or whatever it is, and just sit for the whole runtime. I just want to quickly interrupt this interview to let you know that if you sign up to my Patreon, you can get all the back episodes and this extended episode too. You'll get about 15 minutes extra this month of really interesting conversation if you really want more Melodeon geekery and more about his process working with different musicians. If you're interested in that, then you can sign up via the link in the description and choose the Chatterbox tier or the Archangel Plus tier. You can also get Archie's Melodeon, which we will talk about later in the interview, but every one of my guest tutors on my podcast provides a tutorial. So if you want to learn from these incredible musicians, then you can do so via my Patreon. All the info's in the description. Now back to the interview. Where is your inspiration from? Is it project dependent, or are you kind of constantly, like you say, if you've got a bit of time on your hands, you've got these ideas, you're pulling away, ideas to create the next project, gradually working towards something?
It's a funny one, because I guess it's situational, really. But a lot of my composition comes from like a maths starting point. It's much more centered around rhythm. And like, for example, if I was to write a tune, I would be first thinking of like the note values. So I would just be writing a tune, and you can do it. This is the beautiful thing about this method, is that you can do it anywhere. You can just be walking in the street and be like having this rhythm that's kind of maybe inverting. You just got this thing that's like kind of hopefully slightly catchy, and then when you come home, you just have to trial and error and pick a key signature and then put some notes in those places, those rhythmic places, and then alter and alter and alter, and then you've got a tune. And then depending on if I've been walking somewhere, or if there's something's happened around the same time in my life that tune has kind of evolved, then it feels that that's a quite nice way to marry up those two things. It's kind of a very like algorithmic way of writing music. Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense, and I get a lot of satisfaction. It feels like I can kind of actually physically take things out of my head. They can be swimming around, and then it's like, get the idea down, quickly get it recorded, and suddenly I just feel like I actually feel like I've got like more space inside my head.
Then you have the clarity to work with that idea, like
exactly
externally. A bit like that Tony Stark thing in Iron Man, where he can kind of like externalize things. Yeah.
Exactly like that. Yeah.
Do you find that, obviously you can do this process by yourself, but do you work with Tom a lot in this way? Like, you both working in a similar way to kind of externalize your ideas and then just bounce off each other in that way?
With Tom, I would say Tom is much better at developing ideas. So I think the way that I see, again, this is just my take on it, but the way that I see our process is that I kind of come up with like a small theme. I'm not saying for a minute I come with like a full thing and be like, Tom, learn your part. I come up with like a small theme, and I think that maybe comes from the box. You know, if I'm writing a riff, I need to make sure that I can play it in both directions. Like it's not quite the thing where you can just turn up and be like, oh, I've got this really killer riff, but I can play it twice round and then I end up like this. So I kind of need to kind of come with these slightly polished ideas, and then Tom is much better sounding board for going, right, okay, like yes, no, let's go there, let's try that. That's how I kind of see the process. I mean, we've not actually written any music together since 2019, so we'll come back to me on that one in a couple of months when we've had another go at doing a record. But I've already got a load of ideas that I've been banking up over the past couple of years, so I feel like this next record we're really gonna nail it. I think we know how to kind of operate in that realm now. But we said, let's not push for gigs, and like let's just like take some time, work on this new record, and then kind of do a reassess. It's nice, you know, it's not, you know, Tom's got his recording stuff, I do a lot of kind of teaching stuff. Like the duo doesn't need to be earning us mega money, you know, it's which means it kind of takes the pressure off, and it means it can be a passion project, and
the artistry can really have time to develop, and you can explore it. I think we all need outlets like that, don't we? But it's really difficult sometimes to make time for it if it takes time away from a paid gig or whatever. But
that balance is impossible.
You just mentioned about teaching. I was going to talk about it a bit later, but it seems really natural to talk about it now. Obviously, you are part of the Scientists Melodeon Club as we are building gradually on this Chatterbox series. There's a lot of us out there, as I'm sure you're very aware of. You have had musical education yourself, but mostly self-taught. Is that right to say?
Yeah, I had box lessons for a couple of years, once a month, once a fortnight, with a guy called Chris Edmonds who lived in Crewkerne in Somerset, and he was like a jazz pianist but played box. And when I first started playing, my parents were looking for someone who could just kind of show me how it works. So I had lessons with him for a couple of years, and then I don't know, I find this, you know, having taught, you know, some box players from beginner, there is that space of like 2 weeks where you're just like, you've got it, you've totally, you know what's going on, you know, the mechanics might not be quite there, but I can see that that wiring has happened, and you're now thinking about it in like a box specific way. So I feel like I got to that stage, and then from then on out, just kind of worked it out myself. Just going purely by sound, like do I like the sound of this? If yes, do again. If no, try something different. And
the flowchart of decision making that we have as the diatonic player.
It's like, and I remember, not really understanding anything about harmony, like the chords. I mean, I knew what they were, and I knew they came in pairs, and you had bass and chords, but I was like, why does that sound nice? Why does that not sound nice? And like, but my approach as a kid was just like, there are 8 buttons. How long is it going to take me to just try all of the combinations of those 8 buttons? Like, not that long. And then it was honestly like probably about 4 years ago that I was like, I should probably try to understand like the theory behind this. And then got obsessed with the circle of fifths and all it has to offer. But again, it's like that for me taps into that music is maths. Like, I find that so satisfying. It's just like a big puzzle. Beautiful.
Absolutely. I think I had a similar sort of feeling to you about the same time. Fortunately, maths in any form I've never got on with. So whilst I can appreciate and see that it is a very mathematical thing, and you can then make it very easy, you know, the jazzers out there, you can switch really, really quickly if you understand the maths. But I have to do the long maths all the time. Like, I have to write out the scale, I have to underline the 1, the 4, the 5, whatever it is. Yeah. And it takes me a while, but I actually really appreciate that process because I learn more along the way. You know, I can kind of pick out more information. But that's how I personally pass it on as a teacher. And as a caveat, I always say, well, you know, I'm maybe not the best person for this, so maybe go to this person, or invite people like yourself to kind of go, I don't know this, but this guy does, so I've got him as a guest tutor or whatever. And so gradually there's this amazing bank of, you know, Melinars and tutorials that's building up. So hey guys, if you're listening and you're interested in that, check out my Patreon. Little plug for that. When I listen to your music, in the way that I process sound and the way that I guess I very much stand more on the traditional side of things. There's very little of what I hear from you now that sort of fills that. You're kind of really above and beyond that, you know, in this very contemporary world. And I love how my brain sparkles when I listen to what you've done with a melody because of what you're doing on the right hand, left hand, whatever that harmony is. There's a lot of modal shifts all over the place that just really like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. It's a surprise. I'm meaning this as a compliment, by the way. I hope it's coming across like that.
No.
I realised how I got there might have been a bit dubious, but and I think particularly to get onto this point with Moya, your wonderful new collaborator in Ireland.
Yeah.
When I heard what you did at the Imbolc Festival, your very first festival, it looked like a huge crowd, and you guys, again, kind of a massive stage with you both sat facing each other. Yeah. I think that for me, the two things. It was the sound of your instruments, because you're both on Vander R, which I think is magic. And then just what you were both achieving in this absolute togetherness. It's so rare to come across that. And it was I've got goosebumps thinking about it. But yeah, I don't know. Let's talk about all of these things for a bit.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with Moya, that's kind of freshest in my memory, in my mind at the moment. Yeah, she's amazing.
How did you meet? How did you get to know her? I've never heard of her.
Yeah, so I met her in 2020. We were chatting about this the other day because we had to do an interview about it. And so I think it was 2020, and I was playing over at a festival in Derry, the same festival that our first gig was at. Moya was kind of running the festival, or was like heavily involved in the festival. We got on really well, and then we went to a session, and I was just like, wow, she can really play. We didn't really keep in touch too much, and then I kind of saw her a couple years later. I was playing the same festival. We were in the same pub, probably playing the same tunes at the session, and I was like, Moya, let's just do an album. Let's just do a box album. Ended up being like a long EP, but I was like, look, I love your playing. I've been thinking about doing a double box album, kind of looking at the similarities and differences between the Irish system, like the BC system.
Is she a BC player?
She's BC with a half row. God knows what's on the half row, and she's got 12 bass as well. So it's like a kind of a contemporary BC box. And then I went over last August, 2 Augusts ago. Went over to Derry, which is where Moya's based. We're like, right, let's just write. And we both had a couple of ideas for things, but we're like, let's just like speed write and like go in with no egos. Like, we're allowed to veto anything that we don't like. It's not like a criticism on you as a person. It's like, I don't like that idea. What about? Yeah, I think the thing we said was like, you're allowed to veto an idea, but then you've got to have a suggestion.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, no. You'd be like, okay, well, what? You'd be like, I don't know. So we sat down in this room. We'd basically never played any music together. We got this EP, like 25 minutes of music written in 2 days. 2.5 days maybe. And it's great. I mean, there are some tunes on that record where they're like little phrases that I've had in the kind of mind bank for like years. And they were like, I've got these phrases that I think they're absolutely killer. I don't want to I'd been trying various ways of getting out of these phrases. Nothing had happened. And then played them to Moya. Moya was like, oh, what about this? I was like, yeah, that's it. That is the phrase that I've been looking for. So there's a lot of that. And then, so we had all the stuff written, and then we were like, right, we just need to book Tom. We the album's coming out on Tom's record label, Slowworm Records, and we're like, we just need to book Tom, because otherwise we're never going to do it. We're just going to sit on this material. So in October just gone, Moya flew over, and we spent 2 days like arranging the stuff. And then we went to Wales with Tom and a mate of mine, Graham, who's an amazing cello player and singer, but also like one of those people that, amazing filmographer and photographer and producer. Like in the realm of like creative arts, he just does everything really well, and he's really nice. So we got him to come along, and he's got loads of videos of the tracks and various photos. So we've got all of the material is kind of ready to go, and we were going to have the album out for the gig in January, but it was all getting a bit tight, and it was going to be like, we were going to have to rush it to maybe not even have the CDs out for the gig. So we're like, right, let's not put that time pressure on it. Let's just like say we're not going to have it out, and that's going to just be a gig that we're just going to do, and it's going to be nice. And so we're going to have it out in autumn or winter, and we're going to do what was going to be like a small tour in December, but it's actually turning out to be quite a big tour.
Well, that's good news. I think this is a really appropriate moment to say that I am hosting Archie and Moya. They're double headlining with Dave Malkin and Louis Campbell at my house, because my house is big enough to have house concerts now. So for anyone listening who isn't a weirdo and lives close enough to me in South Derbyshire, get in touch. And I haven't, the tickets aren't on sale yet, but I will keep a list. As soon as I saw it, I think I reached out to you and said, Archie, I've got a massive house now. Do you want to?
It's like, wow, it's funny you should say that, because we are trying to book an album launch tour. So this is all going very well.
Archie is my guest tutor on this evening's Melodeon, which is live on Zoom. You guys listening will have missed it, but it's available as a recording. And you're doing a session on finding your voice as a musician, but we're specifically looking at Melodeon, but it will be useful, I'm sure, for all types of instrument. Within an ensemble setting, or just playing with another person, or more than one, basically. So
or even just arranging music for yourself. Like I did a solo record a few years ago, which is just accordion, and I was like, I don't want it to just be tunes, like just tune, next track, tune. Yeah, like I'm gonna just kind of talk about how. Because it's that thing of like when you're playing with other musicians, the temptation is to just everyone do the same thing, and we can work, getting everyone doing the same thing and make it really nice and tight. And it's like, cool, great. Like there's more interesting things that we can do, but I appreciate it's quite a scary thing to be like, right, here's like some structured theme that we're operating around. It might be an A-B tune, it might be a riff, it might be a verse, chorus, song structure thing. Can you write a part that's not just following the tune or following the melody of the lyric? But then the next thing is, can you find something that's not like invasive or like intrusive and kind of taking attention away from that main theme? But then it's also like, can you find something that's not so subtle that you could do without it? It's like finding this, it's a real fine line to tread. I'm not for a moment saying that I'm the expert at doing it. I've got some pointers for how we can kind of approach that, like writing your own parts thing. And it's you can basically think about it as composition. It's like writing a tune. But instead, you're not writing a tune with an A-B structure. You're writing something with slightly smaller parameters. With anything you're trying to arrange, everything that you need is in the theme. You don't need to suddenly start thinking like a million miles away and dragging stuff in, whatever. Everything you need should be in that theme. And it's about selecting those bits, like rhythmic chunks of that tune, or like certain intervals in the melody that are particularly catchy or whatever. It's just like getting that ability to kind of take those snapshots and then augment them.
Yeah. And
it kind of makes the arrangement feel, to my ears and to my mind, it makes the arrangement feel more cohesive, because you're not just going like, here's something and then I just wrote this and I'm just going to just put them together. It's like, nah, I heard that and I was like, going to take that and going to take that and use that to kind of to create my part.
Yeah. No, and I think that it's a very, because this is where the real artist comes involved, because you can easily overcook it and add too many ideas into the pot. Mm-hmm. And maybe the chord sequence changes and everything is changing around it. And actually what you're saying is just knowing which bits to take. And that will obviously differ. Everyone will have a different opinion on that. But there is this kind of thinking about it and being shown some ways into that. I think that's what people fear and are unaware of, is that kind of way into finding that.
And the thing is, people are afraid of being wrong. Yes. But the thing is with this, it's like, it's not right or wrong.
You'll just end up with, however many people are in the room, you'll end up with that many versions of the same.
And like, one person might really like two people's ideas and not like the other people's ideas, and then separate person in that room might hate the two ideas that person one liked but really loves, and it's like that's what music is such a subjective thing, like. And it's just that idea of like, let's just have some opinions on things and like, let's try and develop some vocabulary that we can talk about music, and it's not, there's no ego attached, and we're not going to get so attached to the ideas. And I had this, I've definitely had this when I was younger, getting really attached to ideas and being like, I spent ages writing this idea and it's just been like vetoed. But it's like, it's cool. It's for the greater good. Like, if anything, if you write an idea and someone else vetoes it, brilliant, you've got that idea for something else.
Yeah, keep it in the back pocket. And again, I think that's a part of just getting older in general, isn't it? Is like detaching the emotion from the work, which, you know, as an artist is hard sometimes. But that, you know, if you are ideas generator, you can kind of easily move on and like collaborate on the next idea. It's just off the back of what you were saying there about this Melinar and the ideas that you're going to explore. I want to just say that as a tutor myself, I have taught alongside you, which means I've never actually been able to be part of any of your workshops because they always run concurrently. But I've heard so many good things from students of mine that have been in your workshops or have had private lessons with you. And I just, from what I've heard about your approach to teaching in general on the Melodeon, I really just want to say how much I sink in with your brain and kind of really like your approach. But can you just talk a little bit about your methodologies, kind of the umbrella approach? You know, what are the things that you as a tutor, what do you want to get across to people? What is the kind of the main themes of what you do as a teacher?
Self-discovery. Like, I think for people to really feel like they've got ownership over an idea, I feel there has to be this, like, not this kind of spoon feeding of like, here's what we're going to do. And it's like, I want to provide people with a toolkit so that they can discover these things themselves. Like, I never, for example, give out chord progressions. Like, used to, waste of time, be like, right, people are like, what's the chord progression for this? I'd be like, oh, it's this. And they'd be like, oh yeah, but you didn't do that second time round. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
fine. So it's like, so toolkits for like going, right, here's how we can understand harmony and here's how we can apply it. And that actually choosing what chord to play, that's kind of the easy bit. Choosing where to play it, that's where the decision has to come in. And that's where the subjective, like, I want to change chord there. You don't need to tell me what you want the chord to change to, but if I can see that people are making those decisions going, the harmony feels crunchy there, it needs to change. It's like, brilliant. That's the self-discovery kind of process in real time. I think people you've got to have fun with it. It can't be this chore. The moment it starts to become a chore, it's like, you've lost the student. So I've been working with a lot of my private students, so, you know, some of them for years now, and like, you know, we've got a real like kind of personal connection. So it depends on who I'm teaching, really. I've got some students that they'll want to be like, right, extended chords, like let's really like get into this voice leading thing. And I've got some students where they'll be like, I really, really want to focus on like articulation, and like I can play the tune and I can play it in the correct order and whatever, but it doesn't sound nice. Like, why doesn't it sound nice? I'm like, okay, cool, let's kind of back analyze that. Yeah, it's like tailoring. I mean, it's all kind of pretty standard stuff. You're like tailoring it to what each individual person needs. But I think for me, the main thing is that idea of self-discovery. Even if you basically have given them the idea, if you've kind of given them it in a way where they feel like they've discovered it, then wicked, because they're gonna come away from that hopefully being like, I just had this amazing like spark of ideas today, and now I feel like I can, because I feel like I've, you know, had that kind of gone on that mental process, I feel like I can now apply that to other things that I've been working on.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think I tailor, and you know, you said it's obviously it's an individual process when you're working with somebody one-to-one. There's all sorts of different ways of doing that, and it's for us as the tutor to choose from our many tools, and you know, to kind of choose what's appropriate. But I think it's the same thing as if you can give them that aha moment, that's so much more powerful for them than just spoon feeding them and letting them, oh, I can now play this tune. Great. I want to play the next one now. Like there's such a different process for them to be able to bring you a tune and say, oh, well, we didn't look at this in the lesson, but I've just gone away and applied this same thing that we learnt with this. That's why I want to work with people one-to-one, because of that. Yeah. That relationship that you end up building up, and it's so much more enjoyable for me as a tutor to work with people who are open to that, because for some people who are more nervous, who are more used to being given ideas, maybe from previous school experience or whatever, I can also see it from that perspective of, I don't want to make mistakes, so please just tell me what to do. And I will work with that to a point until I can kind of coax them, because I can see that it's just a nervous, anxious thing. And obviously I can easily tell you what to do, but we will get to a point where I'm going to ask you to make a decision, and based on what we've done before, and that is magic. It's like the best job in the world from that perspective.
For sure. It's the one thing that I notice, especially with box players, is that moment where students who have said, I can't learn by ear. You're like,
I know.
No, you can.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting you to come to this workshop and we go, here's a phrase, got it. Here's the next phrase, got it. Like, I'm going to show you how to learn by ear. Yeah. I'm not just going to expect you to be able to, respond to pitch. Like, that's crazy. So that moment, and I've got, I won't name them. Got a couple of students in particular who were very much like that. And now it's like, I can just give them half an A section and they'll just get it.
Yeah, I always find that sometimes some of the hardest work that you end up doing is that coaxing of trust, to say, please trust me in this. I'm going to show you how to do playing by ear, but I need you to sit and try, and then we can go from there. And actually, I'm going to push this note. I'm going to tell you what button it's on. I need you to do the same, and then we go from there. And as soon as that ear-hand coordination kind of starts to build, you're like, oh, I get the picture now. This is playing by ear. Okay. Yeah. How does this translate? I mean, when I looked online, and I knew that you worked with Leeds Conservatoire, but I did not realise that your title was Senior Folk Lecturer.
It's actually now principal folk lecturer, whatever that means.
Oh my goodness, have you risen the ranks? How does this happen? Because you're only just 30. You're not much older than 30. But when did you get this title?
I started working there when I was 23. So yeah, I've been there about 8 years now.
And what does the work involve? Is it we've talked with Cohen, for instance. Pete Coe was his kind of mentor as part of that. But do you actually go and give kind of lectures in front of a lectern and everything, or is it more interactive?
So depends what module it is. So I do a lecturing series for first years, but that's not just folk students, it's for the classical students, classical pop production songwriters. It's about 150 of them.
Wow.
And that's a lecture series called Reflective Practice, which is basically how to practice, like how to analyze what you're doing, how to kind of combat performance anxiety, kind of going into a lot of like performance psychology, understanding learning types and how we can actually, most people probably haven't been practicing in the most efficient way for them. And that's, I think I've done that module for 4 or 5 years now. And first lecture I was doing, I was like turned up, plugged my laptop into the big screen, and all these first years come in and they will just start writing down everything I'm saying. And I was like, oh my God, like this is so intense. But it's it's a very discussion based module. I think it's quite interesting. We kind of go into ways of shifting awareness when you're performing. So if you find yourself getting in your head, like what can we do to kind of get ourselves back in the moment? And it might be one of those things that for like 18-year-olds, they're like, all right, shut up, Archie, we don't care. But actually, hopefully, like when they get to like their 30s, they might be like, oh, actually, there's some nuggets there. He wasn't actually like just being boring.
Without, your degree was in biology. To me, that I don't care because I also have a biology degree, and it trains your brain to know a certain way to teach, but also to learn and all of that stuff. How did you get this gig without any teacher training? Or maybe I'm mistaken, maybe you do have teacher training. And again, I don't care about that because I think we can reinvent ourselves. We have skills without qualifications, of course we do, but it just really intrigues me that you've got to this really high position.
Lots of experience. So I was doing a lot of when I was at uni, I was doing, and I still do it, I kind of work on the youth programme at Halsey Manor, and so I've done a lot of teaching at Halsey Manor. That job just came up at the right time, right place, right time. I just finished uni, just got my degree, and then they were just setting up the course. They kind of asked about the approach to teaching, and I think I had to prepare like a hypothetical term 1 plan for what I'd be doing with my box student. And like a lot of my approach to teaching is like technique and exercise focused. I don't think enough of that is taught on the box. So I've spent a lot of time kind of working on exercises and techniques that are like box specific, and then like how we can implement them into pieces that we're playing, and how to kind of understand the layout and how to think of it holistically. And just, I mean, I could just chat about accordions forever. So I think they were in an interview setting that was like, okay, he obviously loves accordion.
I'm just listening to what you're saying and thinking there's probably a series of books in you or online courses, something like interactive. Obviously it's the time and it's the space for it.
It's coming. It's been there's drafts that I've been working on. We'll see. I think I was saying earlier, I've got no work in September, so we'll see what happens then.
An online course, as in helping you build one. I find that they are one way of learning, let's put it that way, but I sell 2 a week on average, and I have been since 2018, so for me, it's a visual method. I'm a visual person, so therefore it was the most obvious thing for me. And I should say I had some incredible help from a woman in America who does this professionally for big corporate companies and stuff. So she mentored me in the mechanics of how to teach online, but taking what you do on the floor and like how to build that and integrate it into little tiny bite-sized lessons, so nobody sat watching a video for an hour, because we just don't do that, do we? But we could watch a video for a minute and then go, oh, okay, and then I'll sit and noodle that for 10 minutes and then watch the next video and blah blah blah. But I mean, there's all sorts of ways you could do it, but I'm excited to hear that it's on the cards for you at some point.
Along with just so many other things, but it'll get there.
Archie, thank you so much. This has been fascinating, and there have been so many ways that I could have gone with it, and I still would love to talk to you at length about quite a lot of them, but I think that we have enough for our episode. But would you be interested in doing an episode 2 some point in the future? Because I think maybe talking about your teaching approach a lot more and this idea of practice approach, that's a topic I get asked about all the time. I obviously have my ideas that I offer, but to have somebody who works at greater length in the industry would be really... I'd
be delighted. Absolutely
great. Well, if you want Archie to be coming back, leave a comment in the downstairs in the description, and check out the links down below. I'll leave links to all of Archie's places where he posts things, where you can buy his albums, where you can see him live. Don't forget about that gig, December the 9th, I think it is, isn't it? At my house.
December the 9th, at Mel's house.
And if you want the recording of the Melenar that we're about to do, then you can grab that via my Patreon, as well as the extended episode of this podcast as well. So thank you very much, Archie.
Great, thanks, Mel.
Just another thank you to Archie for that incredible interview. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave me a comment if you're on a platform that can allow comments. Like, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching over there, and give it a 5-star review if you're listening on somewhere like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Anything to help boost the listenership of this podcast would be absolutely amazing, and all of those little things just feed the algorithm information to let you know that this is worth listening to. Also, just manual shares, ping it in an email to some friends or a WhatsApp or whatever. That would be incredible. Thank you so much to everyone who supports this podcast, either on the platforms that you listen for free, and a particular thanks to my Patreon supporters, because without you, none of this could happen. So I am so grateful. Thank you so much. This month on my Patreon, coming on to teach a tutorial, he'll be my guest on the podcast next month, is the wonderful Martin Coudroy. I have never met him. I've missed so many opportunities when he's been in the UK. He's been teaching at Halsey on the Melodeon Advanced Week. I was in Canada at the time, so I missed that. And I have also missed when he's been over with his duo to play for some Balfolk events. But I've heard so many good things. I've also heard his music, and I am a big fan. So I am very much looking forward to sitting down with a bit of an unknown to me, but I hear that he's a lovely person and he speaks incredible English, which I'm very grateful for, and he's got one of these incredible portfolio careers. A wonderful musicologist. He's studied at university in France, but he's also studied in Sweden, contemporary dance as well as traditional dance. He's very interested in aesthetics and the blend between jazz, gypsy swing, folk, musette, balfolk, and different worlds of music and how they collide. So reading online about him, it seems like we will have quite a lot to talk about. If you'd like to meet Martin live on Zoom, you can join the Melenar tutorial. He'll be live 7 p.m. UK time, 23rd of April. That's a Wednesday evening. It will also be recorded, so don't worry if you can't make the live. You'll be able to catch up with membership to Patreon. And also you will be able to hear his podcast episode next month. Martin is going to be doing a Melinar tutorial all about how to use the bellows to tell better stories, phrasing, and how we can make our music more joyous and more lively. There's already some tutorials that I've done myself on the simplicity of bellows, starting to pulse with it, starting to understand what this airbag can do, but Martin is going to be taking that all forward and showing us a lot of different techniques that he has picked up along the way. Just a couple of things from me this month. There's no events that I'm teaching at. That's all waiting for May when I'm at the DG weekend at Halsey, and I'll be teaching there with Dave Gray and Hazel Askew, which I'm really looking forward to. So hello to anyone who's going to be there. But in April, I've got quite a lot of availability for private tuition. I've also got my online course, Pick Up and Play. So if you're interested in getting to grips with the very basics of the instruments, maybe you're starting from scratch, or maybe you're struggling to get both hands to work together, check out Pick Up and Play. And you can also sign up to online classes. That's a separate thing to my Patreon, which has loads and loads of Melinar tutorials, but on my website I have online classes which I recorded live during lockdown, but I made available as a kind of after sale recording bundle. So there are different themes all based around a tune, and each one is involving looking at different musical techniques and topics within that tune. Everything's described in the description, so you can have a look before you buy it. And also Patreon members get a little cheeky 15% discount, so always check if you are a member. I will leave details to all of that in the show notes below. Thank you ever so much for listening and tuning in again this month. I am really, really grateful, and I will see you again next month with Martin Coudroy. Thank you so much. Bye.